you probably couldn't have written it without a few novels under your belt.
Probably not at all.
You know, I
No.
mean, it would have been way too challenging as a first novel, for example.
Oh,
But,
yes.
You know,
And
it's
I
nice.
don't know that I would have had the courage to do it as a first novel, to tell you the truth.
Well, there's that, too, because
Yes.
it isn't, it's not a story easy to define. You know,
Yes.
there's so many different parts of it that it'll be sort of fun to see how it does. How is it doing? Do you have reports from your publisher?
You know, I haven't had any recent reports, but I think it's doing quite well.
Great.
I know that they've gone back for a second printing.
Well, that's always encouraging.
It is encouraging, but I haven't heard any early numbers, so we'll have to.
As long as you're satisfied with it. Now, tell me briefly, before we run out of time, what is your role in the International Thriller Writers Association?
Well, actually, this year I am the awards chair, which means I had to get all the judges lined up and twist their arms and get them to do what they needed to do to judge for the best thrillers. And it's just been a lot of fun to get to know a lot of these writers. You know, as I said earlier, I haven't had the opportunity to really hobnob with too many writers outside of conferences, and International Thriller Writers, we are really dedicated to helping each other succeed and really work as an organization. So it's been kind of a challenge, but it's been an awful lot of fun to be a part of it, especially being a part of an organization on the ground level, because I kind of came in day one.
Well, this is the second year. I mean, it started here
Yes.
in Phoenix, as you know,
Yes.
in 2004 with a conference that the Poison Pen hosted.
And you put the bug in the ear of...
Well, you know what? It happened in the first conference we held here in 1995. I was inspired to ask a number of authors to come back the next year and do a conference about the author that had inspired them. So we had Michael Connelly and Raymond Chandler, and Joe Gorse talked about Dashiell Hammett, and Harry Keating came from England and talked about Dorothy Sayers, and Laurie King talked about Sherlock Holmes. You know, it was a great conference.
Wow.
But to do it right, because they were solo speakers, they basically had to write a paper. The most interesting one of all, strangely enough, was Justin Scott, whom people don't know very well, and he did this thing about Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island that blew everybody away, and pointed out that Stevenson is the first author who actually changed the narrative point of view. He got stuck in Treasure Island, and he moved that book in the middle from, I never remember, I have to go back and see, but either he moved it from first person to third, or he moved it from third to first, right in the middle of the book. And then it goes on.
I don't remember that happening.
Anyway, they had all essentially had to write this out. And we mercifully had recorded it because Michael had spoken extemporaneously. He didn't have his written out, whereas Justin had the paper and all. When it was over, they all said to me, "This was terrific." They said, "And now what?" Meaning, I did all that work, and now it's going to die. And I said, in a foolish, this is how Poison Pen Press started. And I said, well, why don't we just publish a festschrift?
Are you serious? That's how that happened?
And so we put it together. Now, Michael, I had to listen to the tape and do a transcription.
Oh,
and then
my
Michael
gosh.
edited it to get to his paper on Raymond Chandler. Anyway, it was nominated for an Edgar. And I thought that was so cool that we started a publishing company kind of based on that. So in 2004, by an absolute chance, and it's mostly dictated by who's on tour with a new book at the time I want to have the conference. I mean, there's nothing magical here. It just happened that all of the authors that I invited, I think it was 8, were all thriller writers. It was Lee Child, who had a new book. Kathy Reichs had her new book. Clive had a new book with Paul Compreco. Steve Hamilton had a new book. I'm trying to remember who the rest of them were. But anyway, Gail Linz had a new book.
Probably David Morrell.
David Morrell had a new book, and I'm missing Vince Flint. And you know,
what
it
a
was
lineup.
it was a great lineup. It was a huge conference and all, but I mean, it wasn't an actual design on my part. It just happened that those were
Seriously?
yeah. And then of course I realized, you know, as I pulled it together, because they were all going to come here on tour. The only one that got left out was Jeffrey Deaver. We couldn't make his tour work. But I realized, as you know, we were kind of getting it together, that by some chance they were all thriller writers. So I called it, you know, a thriller conference or thriller fest or whatever. And again, the same thing happened. Everybody came, everybody had a great time, and then they said to me, "Now what?"
Now what?
And I said, "I'm not doing another book. Why don't you guys, you know, form an organization?" So Gail and David basically agreed on the spot that they would, you know, take it over. And Clive was the lunch speaker, so
Yes.
you know, he was the first guest of honor for the first Thriller Fest, which was last year. It took him from June 2004 until June 2006 to actually put together Thriller Fest. And then they decided to do an award, which is called the Thriller.
The Thriller.
Right. And so here you are in basically the second year of the,
And the
of the
second
conference
year
and the second year of the awards.
Yes.
You know.
And it's been amazing too. I was a judge last year,
Right.
so I got to kind of see from day one. And I was a part of that first meeting that we had at VoucherCon up in Toronto, where we all sort of
Right.
felt like we were betraying the rest of the mystery writers by meeting. But it's been really exciting because I think a lot of people were sort of surprised that it could be pulled off.
Well, it took, you know, fortunately, you know, for purposes of doing this, thriller writers are generally paid a lot more money than mystery writers. So you're talking a lot of people with deep pockets who could afford to not only put an organization together, but travel and do stuff without necessarily publisher or fan
Writers
support.
aren't necessarily the best at coming together as a team.
Well,
We're
that's
pretty
true.
solitary people.
It's been unusually supportive, I think, the writers of each other, and that's been very helpful. I think the Mystery Writers of America, sometimes the membership is slightly more divisive because there's so many people doing so many. Any organization is like that.
I believe
and
so, too.
Also, you're at the inception, and there hasn't really been time, you know, for a lot of stuff to come up that may cause it problems down the way. But I know I've been very impressed and delighted for, you know, for people like you, for whom it's obviously providing a lot of not just professional support, but emotional support.
Well, doing the awards has been kind of fun because I've gotten to see the growth. I mean, just the excitement from publishers and media and agents. I'm trying to think how many books we had submitted last year, and the number escapes me, but I know that we had almost twice as many this year. So that shows to me that there's a lot more
Absolutely.
respect that's kind of being generated.
Well,
and
I know you're
excitement.
meeting in New York this year, and it'll be in the middle of July. I don't know when this program is going to air. It'll probably be considerably after Thriller Fest.
Probably, yes.
But then, you know, people can go to Thriller Fest,
.com
Google
or
Thriller
dot-
Fest,
dot org.
or right, and keep up with future meetings. 'Cause
Definitely.
presumably it will travel. Unless
think
it
so.
stays in New York, but in general, it's a good idea for a convention to move around and get.
It was
new
actually a
blood.
lot of fun being in Phoenix last year.
Yeah, and New York is a very expensive venue, and so to really make it work as a kind of grassroots thing, you need to move.
I think
well,
so.
I think that we've run out of time, and as
Okay.
ever, there's all kinds of things we could have said, we didn't. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. It's been fun.
It has been fun, and I certainly thank all of you for joining us today.